Okay, well, hello everybody, and welcome to tonight's Macula and Me webinar. My name is Kathy Yelf. I'm the Chief Executive of the Macula Society, and it's great to have lots of you on the webinar this evening in spite of the extraordinary circumstances that we're all living in. And I hope you've all managed to stay safe and well from the extreme heat that we've been having in the last couple of days. We have an hour tonight for our webinar as usual. That will include time for your questions, of course, so please do use the chat function to put any questions that you have, and we'll get round to, of course, as many as we possibly can. Now, we always bring you experts on these evenings, and tonight, of course, is no exception. However, we're not talking about macular research or medical breakthroughs tonight. We are fixating on the eccentric. Now, I don't mean, of course, that we're focusing on odd behaviour, but on a technique, or rather a couple of techniques, that can make a remarkable difference to people who have lost their central vision. These are called eccentric viewing and steady eye techniques. Now, what on earth, you may be saying? These names are not exactly out of the Ronseal marketing school. They don't exactly tell you what they do on the tin. So I am delighted to say that our resident expert, Hannah Keegan, is with us this evening. Hannah runs our Skills for Seeing program. And this program is a training or coaching program in these special techniques of eccentric viewing and steady eye technique, along with advice about lighting and optimal magnification. So, Keegan, welcome to Macula and Me this evening. Thank you very much indeed for joining us on a very hot evening. I'm sure you probably would rather be with a gin and tonic, but it's very good of you to join us. And I'm going to hand over to you to tell us about Skills for Seeing and eccentric viewing and steady eye. Thank you very much, Hannah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm hoping that there will be a gin and tonic waiting for me at the end. So that's not a problem at all. So I'll start with just giving a little bit of background on our Skills for Seeing program in general. So it's one that has changed significantly over the last few years. It's something that we did used to offer exclusively as a face-to-face service, which was provided by our fabulous volunteers and some of our partner organisations across the UK. So we would either deliver this training at people's homes or resource centres, and this was to teach eccentric viewing techniques and also offer some guidance on lighting and low vision aids. So the drawback with this is that we did find it could be a little bit of a postcode lottery, as we were unable to offer coverage across the whole of the UK with these face-to-face trainers. So the pandemic has actually really allowed us to reassess how we can better deliver this service in a more flexible way, allowing us to reach more people. So we now offer this support over the telephone. We do some digital training. In some areas, we still offer face-to-face. And we will also now be doing some introductory group Zoom sessions from next month. And we do also have a fantastic new eccentric viewing online training platform, which is a really good place to get started for anyone who would like to start learning any of those techniques independently. So I will go into a little bit more detail shortly about what eccentric viewing actually involves. It certainly used to be that our Skills for Seeing program was solely focused on teaching people these techniques. But now it really is about bringing together a couple of different elements to allow people to really maximize the vision that they do have. So when a person is referred to our Skills for Seeing program, we like to have a good chat with them to manage expectations, understand a little bit more about what they want to get out of the training, and make sure people know that using eccentric viewing techniques isn't a replacement for central vision, as it does involve using someone's peripheral vision, so finding a clearer, brighter, or more distinct area of that vision. So it's not the same level of detail, but it can really support with any visual goals that people may have. So it could be things like watching television, reading, recognizing faces. So knowing what people really want to achieve does help us to tailor the training to make sure it's really person-centered, so we can adapt it to what you would like to do. So it's important to point out that our volunteers and our partners are not medical professionals. So we can't give you any specific advice on your individual condition or progression. Those are still questions for your eye care specialist, but we hope that we can provide maybe a better understanding of your condition, or how to manage it. So we do like to get a bit of background information as well and understand what support you may have already received in your local area. So it's really helpful for us to understand if you've had a low vision assessment, if you've had support from a sensory team, as this might help you once you've started learning the techniques to carry on with them. So a big part of the training that we offer is actually understanding if you've got any low vision aids. So if you use a magnifier, do you use any accessibility options on an iPad or computer? And we always recommend that it's really good to find out what works for you. Try before you buy is definitely very important. There's no one size fits all when it comes to low vision aids and magnification. So we'd always recommend that if you haven't had a low vision assessment, that's a really great place to get started so you can see what might work for you. Or if you've got a resource centre in your local area, they're usually happy for you to try out a couple of different options just to see what might be a good place for you to get started. If you're using something like a handheld magnifier, it's really important that you are sitting comfortably when you're using this. We do hear quite often that people may have been provided with a magnifier from a low vision clinic and it's been sat in a drawer for many months because they haven't necessarily been shown the best way to use it, how to get the optimum usage from it. So being comfortable in using these things is really important. So if you're using it for something like reading your post, find a comfortable chair that you can sit in. A clipboard is definitely your friend for something like letters. It really helps to keep an even surface. And if you are using something like a handheld magnifier that's got a stand, it's great if you can then lean that on the clipboard, and that will just help you be able to move that magnifier along quite smoothly. And again, it helps keep that surface nice and even, which is really great, especially if you're putting lighting in the mix with that as well. We find that, again, when you're first using any sort of magnification, it's very tempting to maybe be hunched over a table, but that can get uncomfortable quite quickly. So really find what works for you and how it's easiest to use those low vision aids. And again, it may be that you need to have a little bit of trial and error. So try moving the magnifier closer to your eye, a little bit further away, find that optimum little bit of vision where you can really use it comfortably. So you may also find that you need different magnifiers for different tasks. So it could be that you have a little selection. And it's also really good to know that the smaller the lens you have, the closer it does need to be to the page in the eye. And if you are using something that's smaller, that means it's typically a stronger magnifier. So once you've gotten a little bit more confident with low vision aids and we've talked through that and we understand what you're using and if you're happy with it, it's always really good to start talking about lighting, because this is actually something that can have the biggest impact on someone maximizing their vision. So by the age of 65, typically we actually need twice as much light as we did when we were 21. And if someone does have low vision, lighting becomes even more important. So the majority of people that do have sight loss require significantly more lighting than their sighted peers, but it's really important to remember that this won't be the same for everyone. So some people may find that certain lighting doesn't make much of a difference. Others may find that if it's too bright, it can be quite uncomfortable. So again, going somewhere like a resource centre or having a low vision assessment can really, really help find the type of light that's good for you. Bringing a light source closer to an object can actually really increase the amount of illumination. So if you're halving the distance between the light and the object, you're actually creating 4 times more light on the object. This is typically why we would recommend something like a task lamp. You can get these quite easily online, again, in resource centres. And the placement of that can also be quite important. So if you're using it for something that requires quite a lot of detailed work, say reading, or people use it for hobbies, it's great if you place it directly over what you're looking at. And if you combine that with your low vision aid, you may find that actually that makes enough difference to maximize that remaining vision. So in some instances, we find that once we've talked through magnification options, lighting, maybe suggested a couple of changes, that can actually be enough for people to find that there's a significant difference. And they may not want to go on and learn eccentric viewing techniques. But when we combine all of it, that's when people do find that they get the most out of it. So when it comes to actually teaching eccentric viewing, it can work a little bit differently for everybody. So to give a very simple explanation, eccentric viewing is finding a clearer or more distinct area of peripheral vision that we can work with to help with daily living activities. So we try and keep this as simple as possible, especially now we're delivering the training remotely. It was a little bit different when we were typically sat in someone's house and going through all this, because it was a lot easier for us to see someone's setup and understand what they were using, where they were sitting, the kind of things that they were doing around the home. So we definitely try and open up the conversation a lot more now that we're delivering the training remotely. And we do tend to use about 2 different exercises to really help us determine someone's clearer or more distinct area of vision. So looking at it from a slightly more technical point of view, we're trying to identify what type of scotoma somebody has. And scotoma is really a fancy word for an area of missing vision. So there are a couple of different types which may help us to determine where someone's clearer area of vision is. So a relative scotoma is an area of vision which may seem a little bit cloudy. So this can be associated more with dry macular degeneration. So at this stage, the macula is still functioning, but at a slightly reduced level. But it may be that actually just getting better or increased lighting can kind of get through that mist to make things a little bit clearer. And there's also an absolute scotoma. So this is an area of vision that is completely missing. So it may be when you're reading, there are certain words that have completely gone. This is typically associated with wet AMD. There is also, you can get a ring scotoma. So you may still have a small area of central vision remaining. So it's almost like looking through a polo mint. With this, you still may be able to find that you can read relatively small print, because you can still pass that through your clearer area of vision. And again, that's when bigger isn't necessarily always better. So if you do have a ring scotoma, or you find that you do have a little bit of central vision that's still remaining and is quite clear, again, you don't want to be going out and buying things in large print or increasing the size of your television, because actually it might be that reducing the size of things is more beneficial to your vision. So when we're talking, we really want to see how someone's vision has been impacted. So we like people to be as descriptive as possible, especially when we are supporting over the telephone. We send a resource pack out to everyone who is receiving the training, just so that the trainer and the trainee are both looking at the same thing and the same kind of charts and grids. So we start it off very, very simply using an Amsler grid, which I think most people are probably familiar with as an initial assessment. So we always work with what we would call someone's better eye. Most people will know instinctively which one this is, but if not, we can determine this as we go along. So we would instruct you to look directly towards the centre of the Amsler grid when you're holding it in front of you at a comfortable distance. And without moving your eyes, we would just like you to describe which areas seem clearer, brighter, or more distinct. So you can try this with each eye. There's no time pressure on it. You can take as long as you like. There may be a couple of areas that stand out on the Amsler grid that you think may work for you. So once we've tried it with the Amsler grid, we actually move on to a large print clock face. We found this is a really, really simple but effective way of not only identifying that clearer or more distinct area of vision, but then using it to start putting things into central focus. So when looking at the clock face, we have it printed out on a large A4 piece of paper. And with all our charts and grids, we offer them in different contrasts as well. We find that's often helpful to see what might work best for someone. So either black on white, yellow on black, etc. There's a couple of different options. So similarly with the Amsler grid, when you've got the clock face in front of you, it's just about looking towards the center of the clock. And again, without moving your eyes around the edge, which can be very, very tempting, we just ask you to notice if there's any numbers that stand out more. And there might be 1 or 2 that you think seem a bit clearer. So we just ask a couple of times just to try having a look. You can look away as many times as you like. It can be a little bit tiring on your eyes if you're focusing in on it for quite some time. But once you found a number that stands out, we can start seeing in which direction you need to look in to eccentrically fixate. So if you were to say to us that on this large print clock, the number 2 is the one that's standing out as the clearest. If you then want to make the center of the clock become the clearest, we'd ask you to look in the opposite direction. So that would be down to the number 7. So you should find that by shifting your focus down to that number 7, you can then see the center of the clock in that clearer area of vision. A lot of people actually find that they are using eccentric viewing techniques without realizing it. So particularly when seeing people or watching television, you may find that actually you're just moving your head from side to side or looking slightly off center. And that's because you're aware that you've got this area of vision, which is a little bit clearer, which you can use. So by doing the training and working with one of our volunteers, sometimes it just cements what you're already doing and gives the confidence to keep practicing those techniques. So we always say that little and often is very important. So your trainer will then set some practice exercises for you to do eccentric viewing, and it could be something as simple as sitting down with a family member, a partner, and just sitting down with them face to face and just practicing which direction you can look in, which will bring their face into better focus. So once we've gone through these techniques and people are feeling a bit more confident with eccentric viewing, we do have the option to go on and teach something called steady eye strategy. This is something which is definitely a little bit more difficult because it goes against our natural instincts of reading. So typically when we're reading, we scan our eyes across the page from left to right and then move down. With steady eye, the technique is actually about keeping your eyes still and then moving the text itself through that clearer part of vision. So it's not going to allow you to read at a great speed. It will probably not allow you to read War and Peace if that's something that you did want to do, but it can help you read with a lot more accuracy. A lot of people find that having a physical bit of text, so a letter, anything by a post or a book, can be a little bit more challenging, especially if you're also using a low vision aid and you're physically having to move that across your vision. But there are some apps available, and we do have one linked through our eccentric viewing online training where the text will actually move across the screen for you. So you can just keep your eyes still and the text can move. The bonus with doing this on a digital app is also that you can adjust the size of the text and the speed at which it moves. So it's great for practicing and getting started in that way because you've got a little bit more control over it. And you can also keep your hands free, so you're not holding a magnifier or trying to put something on a clipboard at the same time. But again, it's great to take the time out to practice these techniques to see what you're most comfortable with. Another important factor with all of this, so combining that lighting, getting confident with low vision aids and those eccentric viewing techniques, we would always say wear any reading glasses as prescribed and keep up with your optician's appointments. We wouldn't really recommend wearing any varifocals or bifocals when you're doing the training, just because they have quite a small area dedicated to reading at the bottom of the lens. So if we're looking at the charts, it's quite likely that you will think that the clearest area is at the bottom of the chart. So it's not always that accurate. So reading glasses are optimal for this kind of training. And again, it's important that you still wear any as prescribed, just because combined with everything else, it really will help you get the most out of your vision. So that was probably the most concise explanation of eccentric viewing and steady eye strategy that I can give, and how our Skills for Seeing programme works as a whole. So I don't know if you've had any questions come in yet or any queries, but
thank you, Hannah, very much indeed. Thank you, that was extremely clear. No, so no, we don't have any questions at the moment, so I hope that they'll pop up now in the chat. But it's also interesting, I think, if people who use this technique or have done so might like to share their experiences. I'm going to appeal now to Fliss, who is behind the sign that says Macular Society, to say that I can see that Thelma has raised her hand. Can we actually invite Thelma in to ask her question in person? I don't know.
Yeah, we should be able to. Just bear with me a second. I'll find Thelma.
We'll just find Thelma, we're coming to you, so stand by and be prepared.
There we go, Thelma, you should be able to speak now if you unmute your microphone.
Hello.
Hi,
Hello,
Thelma.
good evening.
Good. I wanted to ask whether there was any additional advice that you would give to people who are very myopic and when it comes to eccentric viewing?
Again, it really is the importance of wearing any prescribed glasses. So we do hear quite typically when someone has a macular condition that they don't see the point in wearing their glasses. If you're not, you have got macular degeneration and you're myopic. So that bit of peripheral vision that we're trying to work with will still be affected. So again, it's a little bit of trial and error, but the glasses are really, really a very important element of it. And again, that's where those other elements really come in. And I would say that the lighting side of it is probably even more important than the low vision aids, because the low vision aids, you can try out a few different things. There are digital options, but with the lighting, if you get that right, and you combine that with some eccentric viewing, wearing the right glasses, it does make a huge, huge difference to people.
You mentioned, Hannah, that many people feel that do this instinctively themselves. And it was only really after I came to work at the Macular Society and understood about central vision loss that I realized that my grandfather had severe central vision loss. I'm not entirely sure why, probably wet macular disease in both eyes, I should think. But he'd learned to read Braille, but he also used eccentric fixation, because famously, Grandpa never looked at you when he was talking to you. He was always looking out just over your shoulder, and that was clearly because he was using eccentric fixation, wasn't he? And this can confuse people, I think, who don't realise how it works. Perhaps think the person isn't paying attention. And I've even heard of cases where children with macular disease get into trouble at school for looking out of the window all the time, something like that. Is that right? Yeah, absolutely. And I think it's because we're almost more self-aware than we think we are. So when that central vision does start to deteriorate, you are aware that there's another part of vision that you think, if I just look this way and maybe tip my head that way, there's that clearer area that you become quite aware of. And this was definitely one of the bonuses when we were doing the face-to-face training more, is that when we had some of those charts and grids and you'd hand it to someone on clipboard, you would often find that someone would actually rock the clipboard from side to side or hold it slightly to the left or right. So then you'd know that absolutely we've got a clearer area of vision that we can work with. We just need to refine it a little bit. But we've certainly heard that quite a few times from family members or carers. And they say, oh, you know, when I talk to mum, she's looking off my left-hand shoulder and it can be distracting. It's like, well, that's actually how she can see your face more clearly. And we find that one of the loveliest things is when people say that they want to be able to look at family photographs again. And when you teach eccentric viewing, they're able to just look a little bit off center. It's lovely people to say to us, I was able to look back through all my family photo albums and it's been a real treat. So it doesn't have to be big visual goals that people are setting. It can really be the little things, and even feeling a bit more confident in the kitchen as well. Certainly if you get the lighting right first, get some contrast items. So make sure that, you know, if you've got a white kitchen top, don't have white chopping boards. Make sure you've got something really different, and pairing that with a little bit of eccentric vision where it's safe to do so can make a real difference. If people have already identified for themselves an area, is coaching from us of any value to them?
Yeah, so it may not be that they need more than one session with us. So we find that typically at the moment, with most of the sessions being done over the telephone, it can be between 3 and 5 telephone sessions. We tend to keep them slightly shorter just because it can be a little bit more tiring concentrating over the phone for that length of time. But sometimes just having that initial conversation, explaining how eccentric viewing works and maybe just doing the clock face exercise, people just say, that's why I've been looking off to the left. Oh, I understand this more. And that might just be all they need, is that there's a name for it. What they're doing is absolutely correct. They can keep practicing, and that should help them with a lot of daily living activities. So I think there's still a merit in being able to talk it through with a trainer. And again, and making sure those other elements are working for them with the lighting and magnification. And hopefully that just means that, you know, as vision does potentially deteriorate, they've got that technique and they've got a couple of other things that they can pull out the bag as they go.
Do people sometimes have more than one alternative fixation point, so that they might be using perhaps a suboptimal one? They may have another one that they didn't know about and they've latched onto one that seems to work, but actually you sometimes identify something that's better.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is why we tend to say that we work with the better eye when we're teaching eccentric viewing, but often it's quite good for us to try each eye in turn, because people can be a little bit surprised by the level of vision they've got in one eye compared to what they thought. And again, depending on what scotoma people have, if it's geographic, so that's kind of a scattering of sight loss across the macula, it might be that actually they thought their clearest part of vision was 2 o'clock on the clock face, but then we try and get them to have a look round and they think, actually, no, 4 o'clock seems a bit brighter. So it doesn't have to be a really scientific and rigid way of doing it. It can be, let's try this, let's have a look at another chart, let's do a couple of exercises. And we absolutely encourage people, if you want to practice with each eye, just to see if one is a little bit better than the other, or it's not what you thought, then that's absolutely fine. And we're always on hand to answer any additional questions that people might have.
You said that people wouldn't perhaps use it to read War and Peace or something. So I guess that, I mean, we know, don't we, that one of the biggest watershed moments, I guess, is certainly when we have to stop driving, but also this whole business of reading and not being able to enjoy reading, but also it's this loss of privacy that people experience and loss of independence, isn't it? Where you can't put your own bank statement and you can't manage those sort of things, or your own medical prescriptions and so on. So I think I've heard this called survival reading. And it sounds a bit dispiriting in a way, but actually those small things are really quite important to people's independence and self-reliance and so on.
Yeah, and I think a huge part of that is actually knowing what you're entitled to and what you can ask for. So if something that is very important to you, as you quite rightly said, is privacy and wanting to look at your own bank statements, get on the phone to your bank and make sure that they're sending it in a print that is accessible to you, so you can ask for a larger print. So if through the eccentric viewing training, we found that someone's optimum print size is maybe size 18, if they've got a task light, they've got the right magnifier, they can quite comfortably read their bank statement. It's making sure that the information they're being provided is in an accessible font for them. So I think that the eccentric viewing training hopefully also helps increase people's confidence in asking for these right things, and maybe experimenting with things like contrast, or it sometimes pairs quite nicely with our Connect by Tech service, that actually accessing print digitally is really helpful. And it might be that's where steady eye strategy plays in a bit, but making sure that things are in the right contrast, whether it's a slightly bolder print. But some people are actually really surprised at the size of font they can read, and it might be smaller than they thought because of the area of vision that they're working with. But we would definitely stress the importance of making sure that anything that people are receiving that's important to them, like their utility bills, bank statements, is in an accessible format for them. So really important that people feel comfortable asking for that.
So steady eye technique, and we have this, I think it's called the saccadic reflex, isn't it? Where it's almost sort of part of human nature. Certainly in the West anyway, we read from left to right and our eyes scan that so automatically it's very difficult to get the brain to stop doing it. I presume in some cultures, of course, they read from right to left, so presumably they have the same problem but the other way around if they're trying to do a steady eye technique in Israel or somewhere like that. So overcoming this can be quite a challenge for trainees, is that right?
Yes, eccentric viewing is the easier of the two techniques. Steady eye is something that, to put it lightly, is hit or miss, because it does go against that natural instinct that we have to scan text. It can be very difficult to keep your eye still, which is why people have reported to us that there is more success if they're using it on a digital platform, because it's easier to pop your head, your eye in the right position for you for your eccentric fixation point, and then to actually have text that scrolls across. Trying to do it manually, if you have got a letter on your magnifier, that's when it can become quite cumbersome to physically be moving something and trying to keep your eyes still, because it's so difficult not to get your eyes to follow. So we definitely, it's not something that is the be all and end all. If someone is quite happy to practice it, we can go through those techniques as much as needed. But because it is so unnatural to not scan from left to right, as you said, it can be really tricky. But using a digital platform definitely helps with that. And again, the bonus is that you can change that font size, contrast, speed. So it's a really good way to get started with it, just to see how we get on. And once you've practiced on that digital platform, it might be that then trying it with your post or a book is a little bit easier.
So you mentioned this app, the MD Reader app. It's on the App Store, both from Apple and Android, isn't it? Now, it in some ways it can be a bit clunky looking, but what it does effectively is it strips text from other platforms, other reading platforms, and streams through a sort of ticker tape, doesn't it? It's a kind of ticker tape. And it's quite smart because you can speed up or slow down the speed at which the words go through the ticker tape. You can change the size, and you can also, there's a little thing that you move with your finger that will identify your preferred, your best bit of vision, and you look at that bit, you keep your eye fixed on that bit. And it was developed, I think, originally from a grant that the Macular Society made to the Royal Holloway, University of London, I think, to develop this app. And one of the, it was a great success. One of the challenges was overcoming digital publication rights and being able to get access to modern contemporary literature. But there are lots of books on the app, aren't there, and news sources and things like that. So it's well worth having a look. Tell us a little bit about this online platform, because it seems and this has very kindly put in the chat the link to the thing on the online thing, evplatform.org, ev-platform.org. Nice place. So yes, tell us about this online, a bit more about this online training. How can you train people in this online? It seems very ambitious.
It did seem very ambitious, and it certainly was a labour of love for myself. So it was developed very kindly with support from Thomas Pocklington Trust. And the aim was really to provide a forum where people could start learning those techniques independently. So particularly, as we discussed earlier, for those that may be already using a little bit of eccentric viewing and just need it cementing, we wanted to create something that was really simple to follow, that could give people that confidence and understanding how they could make the best of their vision. So you do see a lot of my face on it, which I apologise for. But it's very simple to use. We've got 2 great informative videos down there on lighting and low vision aids to get you started on. And then we've just stuck with a couple of those really simple charts and grids. So again, we've got the AMSLA grids on there. It's all audio led. So we talk you through each exercise, what you're looking for, what you're noticing. Again, if you want to repeat any sessions, you can. And then we just follow that up with some really simple practice exercises. So things like recognizing faces, identifying a 20p on a screen full of coins. So it's designed to be done in order. That's just how it works best, because it gives you all the right information as you go along. But you can go back to certain exercises to practice if that works best for you. And we've also got a great list of resources at the end, how you can find out more about what's in your local area. So we've had some really great feedback so far. It's definitely something that we hope to develop, maybe add a couple of elements into it, but we really just wanted people to start feeling confident in how they could look at these techniques. And for some, it might be that eccentric viewing isn't quite right for them at this stage in their sight loss, but it can be really comforting to know that there is something that they can start practicing should their vision deteriorate, and they've got that information to go back to. So it's very easy to access. You just fill out a couple of details on the web page. I think you said that the link is in the chat box now, and then you get the link sent straight to your email. So whenever you click on that, it will just pick up wherever you've left off. But again, you do have the option to go back and repeat sessions. So we're hoping that it has been a really good tool for people just to start getting to grips with, or even just find out a little bit more about how eccentric viewing works. And again, it's brilliant if family members, carers, friends want to have a look at it as well. I think it gives a really good explanation on how a macular disease can affect vision, but what can be done to continue living life to the full.
That's a good point about family and friends, because obviously we have this digital divide, don't we? And often people who are visually impaired, who are a bit older, are people who are least able to access digital resources. So using family and friends is really important. Okay, we have a question from Judy John, I think. Can we go to Judy, please? And then Thelma has another question. So Judy, would you like to post your question? Okay, Thelma, you go first then.
I wanted to ask about use of the eccentric viewing technique for reading, specifically for people who are dyslexic, because it strikes me it may not be very easy to use. Do you have any experience of that?
I can't say I do actually, Thelma. That's a really interesting question. I would say that it definitely depends on the individual. We would say that anything with eccentric viewing or steady eye wouldn't necessarily be designed to allow you to read at great speed, or again, reading those really long novels. But yeah, I think it would very much depend on the individual. And that's where it might be really pertinent to explore what contrast options would work, what size of text. So anything that would have been helpful pre-sight loss for anyone who has dyslexia, it would just be about how we would translate that for eccentric.
It's also, sorry to interrupt, it's the short-term memory problem, which I think might make it difficult if you're getting text in slowly.
Yeah, it's something that we're actually exploring at the moment with a couple of our volunteers who actually are working with a couple of people we have that have dementia. So again, there's the issue with some of that short-term memory loss. So it's something that we're trying to expand our expertise on a little bit. So I think that it's something that we definitely want to be more inclusive about. And if there's anything else that we can put into the training that makes it more accessible and inclusive to people that maybe have other concerns, we'll absolutely look to do that. So I don't have a specific answer for that at the moment, but it's definitely something that we would be keen to take a look at and how we can expand that into the programme.
Thank you.
That's a very interesting point, isn't it? Because actually, I think often it may be that the ticker tape technique actually helps people with dyslexia. I don't know. We'd have to have a look and perhaps consult with some of the dyslexia charities and people with expertise in that area. So great feedback from the online course, which is good. I mean, the other thing that we have struggled with a lot over the years is just awareness of this technique, hasn't it? And I think one of the things that we hope with the online training is that it will help upskill, or at least create greater awareness of this technique amongst people who work with people with sight loss.
Absolutely, and we've actually found that we've seen a significant increase in our referrals for skills for seeing this year alone. So I think that having our online platform has really helped that, because we've got the word out. There seems to be a genuine interest, not only for people that have a macular condition, but we've also found a lot more professionals have been inquiring as well, and other organisations in the sight loss sector, which is fantastic, because it's such a great thing to kind of have in your arsenal, and we definitely want to make more people aware of it. And we are looking to recruit more skills for seeing volunteers at the moment. So if anyone is interested, please do get in touch with us. It's a wonderful role, but we're just finding that we are being inundated with referrals at the moment, which is fantastic, because it really is helping people make the most of their vision, and giving them the confidence to just talk about it as well. We do still find that we have some people that come to us that maybe haven't had that discussion with a family member, or they find it a little bit difficult to describe their sight loss. So hope that the training is something that helps with that, because they can talk in detail about how they've been impacted, what the challenges are, and again, just describing what they maybe can and can't see.
So if people were interested either in accessing the service or volunteering for it, well, how should they get in touch?
So you can either do that via email, which is just skills@macularsociety.org, or you can call myself and the team directly, and that's 01264 326 622.
We'll put those details in the chat. Judy, I think, has her hand up. Judy, let's unmute Judy, please, and we'll find your question. Hello, Judy.
Hi.
Oh, Judy has come through on my behalf because I'm her husband. May I ask the question myself?
Please do.
When it comes to driving, rather than using varifocals, is it better to use a simple magnification glasses?
For driving?
Yes.
Do we know the answer to that, Hannah? I would have thought it would probably be your prescribed, the glasses that are prescribed to you for driving. And if that's
well, yes, I mean, I have a pair of glasses which I've been prescribed for everything. But when it comes to driving, from what your discussion has been saying, there was a suggestion that varifocals don't help with some of the exercises that you were talking about.
Yes, but I think you need to do those while you were driving.
So sorry.
So if you were at the point where eccentric viewing was a necessity, I would say that's probably at the stage where you would no longer be driving.
I was afraid you'd say that.
Yes. So if you are still driving and your ophthalmologist has cleared you for driving, you should definitely be wearing the correct glasses for that. So I wouldn't necessarily recommend varifocals for that, just because, again, you've got those two vision points on them. So you've got the reading and the distance. So it should be, again, a conversation that you might want to have with your optician about making sure that you've got the right glasses for that. But again, I would say that if you're at the point where eccentric viewing techniques are necessary, that is probably a stage where you would be driving.
Thank you for your honesty.
No problem.
Just going back again briefly, I meant to say to the you mentioned to the online digital program and the difficulty that some people have accessing it, and you mentioned the service Connect by Tech. And I think perhaps it would be really useful to explain what that is. Clearly, everybody on the call tonight has got a degree of digital expertise, but they may like to enhance that, or they may indeed know people who don't have that expertise. So tell us about Connect by Tech.
Absolutely. So Connect by Tech was actually originally set up to be a little bit of a stopgap service during the dreaded pandemic. We found that our advice and information service were getting an increased amount of calls about accessing tech, and people were pulling things out of drawers that they hadn't used in a very long time. And it was things that ranged from just using WhatsApp to keep in touch with the family, or FaceTime, and more people have been using things like Zoom. And in doing that, people have realized that actually there are a lot of great inbuilt accessibility features with a lot of the bits of kit that they've got. So we've got a fantastic team of very tech savvy volunteers. Some of them really do put me to shame, who are available to offer telephone support for people that would like some additional advice and guidance on how to best use equipment that they've got. So we wouldn't necessarily recommend specific bits of kit. It is more designed for people that have maybe got an existing laptop, phone, and would like to know how to get the most out of it. And it's been really wonderful in keeping people connected. It really has done what it says on the tin. So it is a service which is now very, very much here to stay. And we're finding as we're going forward, we've got more of a crossover with our Connect by Tech service and our Skills for Seeing service. So a lot of people want to do what they want to do with their eccentric viewing is better use their technology. So it's been really, really wonderful that actually a lot of the products people are using are high street products. So it's not so much these really specialist bits of kit, which can come with quite a price tag on occasion, but people are using what they've already got. They're using their Android phone, iPhone, tablets, and our volunteers can provide some really, really great guidance on how to make them accessible. So it's a wonderful service that, again, looking to recruit more volunteers for. It's been increasingly popular. And again, it's something that we really encourage any family members, friends or carers to get involved with. If they're able to sit in on a call, it can be really helpful for them to remember how to set things up or what the shortcuts are. So it's a fantastic service, and it does help increase confidence. Some of the slightly more complicated queries, we might refer to a local organisation if we've got some great partners that still do face-to-face work. So if we're not sure about something or we hit a little bit of a wall with a query, we've always got another option for someone we can refer on to for that additional help and support. So it's a fantastic service, and we're very happy that it's here to stay.
Good. So you can access that through the specialist Facebook page. But for our advice and information service, if you wanted any of these numbers, we're the advice and information service, and that is 0300 30 30 111. And Fliss will very kindly put that in the chat as well. 0300 30 30 111. Now, we have a question from Joyce. If we could unmute Joyce, perhaps she could put her question. Hello, Joyce. Go ahead, Joyce. Hello, Joyce. Do you want to ask your question? Well, we can't hear you, I'm afraid, at the moment, but we'll come back to you in a minute. Oh, no, here we are. Come along.
Can you hear me?
I can. Yes. Hello, Joyce.
Oh, hello. I wondered when the best time was to start to learn how to use eccentric viewing. At the moment, I can read, but I wondered whether it was best to be prepared and learn the skill early.
It is entirely up to you. We'd say that there probably isn't a necessary optimum time. We have some people that are referred to us that, like yourself, maybe still have quite a good level of central vision that's allowing them to read or enjoy those daily living activities. But having the information on the technique can be really great if you are concerned about your sight further down the line. I would say the only drawback with this is if you do still have that degree of central vision that you're working with, it's not necessarily that you'll be able to practice the technique because you'll still have that central vision you'll be using. But this is where the online training might come in handy just for a little bit of background information. But if you want to have a chat with myself or my colleague Natalie, who's also on the team, we're happy to talk through any of those techniques and give a bit of an introductory session just to see if it's right for you. And we will always be here if you get to that stage further down the line. So it's very individual whenever it's right for you, but we are always happy to have a chat through in any circumstance.
Thank you.
The challenge, I think, Joyce, is that your brain will stop you looking effectively for eccentric fixation if you can still see centrally. Your brain just won't let you do it. So, so you'll be able to do a lot of background information and education about the technique, actually physically using it at this stage. If you can still read with the middle of your vision, you won't be able to do that, but you'll be well prepared if that time ever came, I guess is what we're saying, isn't it, really?
Yeah,
Thank
absolutely.
you.
Not
Thanks,
at all.
Joyce.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you very much indeed for your question. So you talked earlier about lighting as well, Hannah, and I can remember speaking to a low vision expert who said that something like a large proportion of people who came to his clinic for eccentric fixation training, when he looked at the lighting and optimize the lighting, actually they could read without having to use eccentric fixation, which might be something for everybody on the call to bear in mind as the first port of call. It's amazing, isn't it? What a difference the quality of lighting. So both the color of the lighting, whether it's a blue light or a yellow light, whether it's an overhead light or a over your shoulder light or a handheld light, it all makes such a difference, doesn't it?
It really does. And I would say that that's probably the feedback we get the most of, is how much different having some guidance on lighting makes. And again, some people, it may not have even been a consideration for them. So when we ask people if they're talking about maybe wanting to read, and we ask what their typical setup is, and you find that they've just got a tiny table lamp in the corner of the lounge and they're sat 5 foot away from that trying to read, just making a couple of adjustments and making sure that maybe the lighting in the home is very even. And that's also great from a safety perspective as well, of getting around safely. If you've got that nice bright even lighting throughout the home, can really help. And again, the positioning of it is so important. I think I mentioned earlier about using a task light, which is always really great to get started on, and especially for reading. But we've had people that say that they kind of place it over their shoulder, but then there's a bit of shadow and that can be frustrating. And that's where something like a clipboard comes in really handy as well. So if you've got your task light, you've popped it straight over the top of that bank statement you're trying to read, you've got that on a clipboard, so it's keeping that paper really nice and even and flat, so you haven't got any shadows. And again, just by moving that light closer to what you're looking at, I think I said earlier, increases it by 4 times. And for some people, it's really, really surprising that they can read a much smaller font than they anticipated. So with a lot of our face-to-face sessions, we used to standard do a reading exercise to start with. We'd have what we call our blue skies reading chart, which would have sentences which would get progressively smaller in font. And most people would read the first 2 lines and be like, no, that's it, that's all I can read. Absolutely fine. We'd pop a task lamp on, pop reading glasses on, maybe get the magnifier out, and they'd find that they could read several lines smaller. So again, it's just combining the right things that can make that huge impact. But I cannot stress enough how much of a difference lighting makes. So definitely have a chat with your local resource centre, low vision clinic, and just find what works for you. It can be slightly different for everyone, but getting that lighting right will make a massive impact.
It's very rewarding. I hear from a lot of the volunteers who help deliver this training, that it's very rewarding to see the change in people when they grasp some of these techniques. What's involved? Is it an onerous volunteering role? What's involved in being a skills for seeing trainer?
It's a very unique role, and there's a lot to take on board, but it is really so very rewarding. So we try and make the training for it as interactive and engaging as possible. So it's a lot of group work, and with myself and Natalie. So we're doing the sessions digitally now, which again has been quite a big change for us. But we've also got some of our existing volunteer trainers that are on board to share their own experiences. But really, it's just about having the confidence and wanting to take the time to listen to people. We used to make it quite a technical, almost scientific process, but we realised that that was overcomplicating a lot of it. So when we were talking about things like scotomas and the anatomy of the eye, we found that actually that could be a little bit off-putting, but where we try and place it more as a person-centred approach and say to the volunteer, you know, absolutely take every session with that individual as a new session, find out what's important to them. We've got some great guidance sheets that allow people to build up confidence in delivering those sessions. And I think at the moment we're recruiting just for telephone and digital volunteers, but I know that a lot of our existing volunteers will say that, you know, face-to-face has been the best, not only because they get a cup of tea and a biscuit with a lot of sessions, but it's lovely to be able to sit down and have that interaction. But it really is such a rewarding role because I think you can really see the difference in people's confidence. And we've even found it where we've delivered some talks on eccentric viewing at some of our fabulous groups. And some people have been able to recognise someone's face that they haven't been able to previously. Or one of our lovely volunteers, Caroline, had said that she'd been teaching a lady eccentric viewing, and the next time she'd seen her, the lady said that she'd been for a haircut. And for the first time in years, she'd been able to see the back of her head when the hairdresser had held up the mirror, and it was just the most amazing thing for her. So hearing all the stories and the feedback that we get from volunteers is amazing. It's probably one of our more time-consuming roles, but again, the learners go at their own pace with the sessions. You can make it flexible, you can make it fit in with your time. We always say leave it at least a week between sessions, and we only ever pass on one learner at a time, just so that can be the primary focus. So it's a fantastic role, and it's great to hear the little stories that come out of it as well, and the increase in people's confidence.
I think the volunteers have to keep up their skills though, because it's quite easy for the volunteers to lose confidence if they haven't trained anybody for months and months and months. So we do like to keep a regular flow, don't we, of trainees coming through to them.
Yeah, so we do offer refresher sessions regularly, and we also have monthly support calls for all our volunteers. So most of our existing skills for seeing trainers do call in either once a month or once every other month. We've also started getting some guest speakers in for those sessions as well to update on things like lighting, low vision aids, tech, because we know that these things can change so rapidly. But we find by having a forum of peer support and people share those experiences, that's been a fantastic way for our volunteers to maintain their confidence and enthusiasm just by talking through any little challenges or things that maybe haven't come up before. And again, it's great for myself and Natalie to hear those things, because we are forever learning new things from our volunteers and what they've spoken about with their learners. So it keeps us very up to date as well.
And we should say that most of our volunteers have macular disease, don't they? They're not necessarily fully sighted people themselves, so they will, and very often volunteer having learnt the technique from another volunteer. So
yeah, absolutely. And I think that's one of the fantastic things as well, is that when our volunteers are having those initial conversations with the learner, they're coming from a place of personal experience. And I think that's what really helps open up that conversation. And that's where all that shared experience and those little tips and tricks come in. So yeah, it's wonderful that they can share those experiences too.
It is. Well, Hannah, we've come really to the end of the session now, but thank you so much for your time and such a clear explanation of what it's all about. I'm very grateful to you. If you could, just before you go, put your contact details in the chat so that we can people can see this. If you want to hear any more of the talk again, it will be up on our website in a few days' time. If you know of anybody who you think would benefit from hearing about this, do signpost them to this talk or to the other resources on the website, or directly, of course, to Hannah and Natalie, and they can answer any questions. They're very, very happy to talk about their work, even if they're just interested in hearing more about it. So please do get in touch if you think you would like to know more or would like to think about volunteering. There's no pressure, and you're not committing anything by giving them a ring and having a chat about it. Hannah, again, thank you very, very much indeed for this evening. Next month, we will be talking about faricimab. This is a new drug for wet macular degeneration, which will be marketed under the name Vabysmo. Its technical name is faricimab. It's being produced by the company Roche. And we'll be hearing from Professor Ian Pearce, who is a consultant ophthalmologist and vitreoretinal surgeon from Liverpool, who has been heavily involved in the clinical trials for Vabysmo. And it's for wet AMD and diabetic macular edema. It's an injection drug similar to the same way that the existing drugs are delivered, but it needs to be given less often. This is its great strength. It needs to be given less frequently than either Lucentis or Eylea. So next month, that's the 16th of August, Vabysmo. What is it? How does it work? How quickly will it be available? Will it be better than the older drugs? All these questions and more, no doubt, will be answered by Ian Pearce. So do join us then, the usual time, 7 o'clock on Tuesday, the 16th of August. Meanwhile, keep cool, have a rest of enjoyable evening, and thank you very much indeed for joining My Macular and Me tonight. Thanks, I hope to see you again, and Hannah, thank you again once more. Good night, everybody. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much. Bye.